Welcome to the deep dive. We live in this age that promises total enlightenment, right? All this data. And yet somehow, the more information we gather, it feels like the blinder we get. It's a really strange modern paradox.
Yes.
This unprecedented data leading to this profound sense of opacity. One source even calls it the glare of excessive illumination.
That glare, yeah, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We want to move past the usual hype around generative AI.
Right.
And really do a deep dive into the complex philosophical, ethical, and pedagogical challenges, things it poses to human agency, design, even art itself.
And we've got some serious sources guiding us. We're talking critical theory, ethics, design education. Thinkers like James Bridle and Catherine Hales, even Heidegger, who worried about tech long before ChatGPT showed up.
Exactly. So our mission really is to pull out some clear, maybe actionable frameworks for seeing through this new kind of darkness, this opacity.
Okay, so where do we start? The source material hits hard from the get-go, right? This idea that intelligence is no longer human property.
Yeah, that really shifts the conversation, doesn't it? When you read someone like George Dyson, technology isn't just a tool anymore. No, it's framed more like a living system, like a new stage of evolution where computation itself is seen as a kind of a biological process.
Wow, okay. That's a huge claim. If intelligence is somehow evolving outside of us, what does that even mean for human understanding? Is it a kind of intellectual surrender?
Well, that's the core tension, isn't it? James Bridle really captures this with his concept of the new dark age.
Right.
The paradox is simple, but also kind of terrifying. The flood of data means, yes, we know too much, but we understand far too little.
So the sheer volume creates its own shadow.
It creates its own darkness, exactly. It drowns out the context, the meaning.
Like an intellectual whiteout from too much information. So if Dyson saw tech evolving almost like Darwinian organisms, the critique here seems to be that this evolution happened without our input, without democratic consent almost. The sources suggest we risk democracy itself yielding to this kind of irrational automation.
Precisely. You have decisions being derived from these incredibly complex, data-driven processes, think large language models, and they're often opaque, even to the people who built them.
You see the input, you see the output.
But the middle, the why, just a black box, shrouded.
Which naturally leads to this core anxiety, especially, I think, for creators or knowledge workers, the erosion of our agency. Tools like GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT, they're lauded for making things faster, reducing cognitive load. But surely that productivity boost is worth it. Isn't that the trade-off?
Well, that's the critical question the sources raise. The productivity gains, they're undeniable.
Sure.
But the focus here is on what might be lost in that transaction. When the machine handles complex decision-making, like generating code or drafting analysis, there's a real risk of diminishing the user's agency. We become, as the sources phrase it, operators rather than authors.
Just managing the system.
Managing the system, yeah. Not fundamentally shaping the knowledge or the creation from the ground up.
So we risk becoming dependent on a kind of simulated reality. It reminds me of Baudrillard, warning about representation substituting for the actual skill or the reality itself.
Exactly that. And this opacity, this potential drain on agency, it fundamentally impacts creative output too. We probably need to rewind a bit, actually, back to Walter Benjamin in the 1930s.
Okay. His essay on art and mechanical reproduction.
That's the one. Benjamin argued that the aura of an artwork, that unique, unrepeatable experience of the here and now, it dissolved when art became endlessly reproducible. Think of photography, film.
Okay, so mechanical reproduction dissolved the aura. What does generative AI do to it? Is it just more the same?
It extends the logic, but maybe twists it. It pushes us into what we could call algorithmic reproduction.
Algorithmic reproduction, how's that different?
Well, think about an image generated in the style of Vermeer. It's not a direct copy of any one Vermeer.
Right, it's a mashup.
It's more like a synthetic echo, derived from analyzing thousands, maybe millions, of prior reproductions and related images. It's an image fundamentally without origin, the simulacrum, really, detached from any single context.
Reproduction squared, almost, existing only as potential.
Exactly, as potential. And that potential exists because, and Catherine Hales points out, the digital paradigm decouples information from its material medium.
It's not physically fixed anymore, like paint on canvas or ink on paper.
Right. But what is this digital essence once it's decoupled? The sources mention things like numerical weight matrices, vector databases. Can we make sense of that?
Yeah, let's try.
Okay, think of it like this. You feed human culture millions of books, artworks, whatever, into an AI. It doesn't store them as like JPEGs or PDFs in a big folder. No. It analyzes them mathematically, looks for patterns, relationships, and compresses all that down into a huge multidimensional geometric map. A vector database basically stores the coordinates on this map.
So coordinates representing the statistical relationships between everything.
Precisely. This map, this latent space, that's the non-physical realm where AI creation happens. It's like the compressed ghost of human culture, just abstract numbers and relationships.
The artist Riffing kind of visualizes this, doesn't he? His machine hallucinations pieces. Yeah. They're not pictures of the world.
No, they're visualizations of the computation. Metadata about images of the world, as you said. It's art born purely in that mathematical latent space.
Which brings us back to Hales and maybe her most crucial idea here, the flickering signifier.
Yes, this is key. The idea that meaning in this digital context sort of oscillates. It flickers back and forth between what the human perceives and what the machine is actually computing.
Okay, let's use an example. A poem generated in the style of Sylvia Plath. For me, the reader, it might feel authentic, evoke real emotion, despair, whatever. Where's the flicker?
So your human consciousness reads it as a sign, a symbol, carrying emotional weight, history, and maybe biographical context you bring to it.
Right.
But for the machine, it's just statistical probability. The large language model doesn't understand despair or Plath's life. It's just calculating the most likely next word based on patterns it learned from countless texts.
So the signifier flickers. For me, it means emotion. For the machine,
it signifies a statistical prediction. That feeling of authenticity, that perceived aura.
Yeah.
It's an illusion, really, born in that gap, in that flicker between our interpretation and the machine's calculation.
And that illusion immediately surfaces a huge ethical instability. Because that generated poem, it carries the ghosts of invisible authors, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Its voice is inherently plural, dispersed, unacknowledged. It's built on the uncredited, often unconsented labor embedded in the training data.
So the aesthetic experience instantly becomes an ethical problem.
It does. The work itself conceals the histories, the contexts, the permissions or lack thereof of the data that fuels it. What reads as a coherent style is just an aggregated echo of collective human creativity. But the contributors are spectral, uncredited.
You know, Benjamin saw mechanical reproduction, despite dissolving the aura, as potentially democratizing art, making it accessible.
He did, yeah.
But the sources here seem to argue that algorithmic reproduction actually reverses that promise. This sounds like it goes way beyond art theory. It's economic, it's political.
Oh, it absolutely is. We have to confront the material realities, the costs. AI often gets presented as this ethereal thing, floating in the cloud.
Right, weightless.
But researchers like Kate Crawford, who our sources cite, show how grounded it is in very real, very extractive economies.
Meaning
vast energy consumption for the servers, rare earth minerals for the hardware, and critically, waves of low-paid human labor. Often in the global south, platforms like Amazon's Mechanical Turk, people doing the essential work of annotating, cleaning, categorizing the data AI needs.
So it's not magic, it's labor.
It's labor. And the sources explicitly frame this using terms like data colonialism, arguing that human life, human culture, is being appropriated and treated as raw material for statistical models.
Wow. So instead of democratizing culture, making it more available, we're actually seeing the opposite, like huge proprietary enclosures.
That's the argument. Our shared cultural commons, books, art, music, everything online gets scraped, ingested, and essentially privatized by a handful of major corporations.
Turning culture
into proprietary capital, into training sets for what effectively becomes creativity as a subscription service. And in the process, it strips the original creators, the human authors and artists, of recognition, compensation, control. It really undermines the foundations of creative work.
Okay, that's pretty bleak. But the sources don't just leave us there, right? They talk about ways to resist acts of rematerialization.
Thankfully, yes. Interventions that try to restore some agency, some context.
Not quite.
Well, one great example is the collective called Spawning. They created a tool called Have I Been Trained?
Uh-huh.
that allows artists to search major data sets to see if their work was used, and importantly, to opt out. It reintroduces consent and agency back into that ecosystem.
That's powerful.
Another crucial one is Trevor Paglen's art project, ImageNet Roulette. It basically turned the ImageNet dataset back on its users, showing the often bizarre, discriminatory, even racist labels and assumptions baked into these supposedly neutral datasets.
So it exposes the hidden biases?
Exactly. It restores critical distance, forces us to see the ideology embedded in the data.
This all seems to link back to that idea some researchers call the bitter lesson, Rich Sutton's observation.
The bitter lesson. The somewhat humbling realization that many of the biggest AI breakthroughs, like in game playing or language models,
Right.
they haven't come from encoding clever human rules or insights.
Yeah.
They've come from massive computational scale, from brute force learning on huge data sets. The scale often beats human expertise.
The system succeeds by, in a way, ignoring our carefully crafted knowledge.
Which is precisely why thinkers like Stuart Russell are so adamant that AI development must be explicitly focused on alignment, aligning these powerful systems with human values and intentions.
Because optimization without that clear intention
Can lead to really harmful outcomes amplified at incredible scale.
Hmm.
So the challenge becomes, how do we define and embed that necessary human intention?
Which leads us directly to the classroom, to education. If the machines are winning by brute force, how do we possibly teach people to stay relevant, to maintain agency?
Yeah, the pedagogical response is critical. The sources argue that design education, for instance, needs to shift, move beyond just teaching technical proficiency with the latest tool towards critical inquiry and systemic literacy, understanding the whole system, not just the interface. The argument is that the primary role of design now should be redirective.
Redirective, meaning?
Meaning actively working to change unsustainable trajectories,
Okay.
like the one we might be on towards opaque, unaccountable automation. We need frameworks, mental tools to navigate this.
Okay, let's get into those frameworks. The sources lay out 5 critical lenses, right? Ways for creators, students, anyone really, to evaluate AI adoption beyond just asking, is it useful? Is it fast?
Exactly. Let's start with the first one, Postman's solutionism.
Neil Postman. Okay.
This lens demands you always ask, what problem is this technology claiming to solve? And crucially, whose solution is it?
I can see the trap there immediately. Like an AI tool that offers to critique student essays. Sounds helpful, saves time.
Right. Very tempting.
But if critique gets reduced to only the things the AI can measure, grammar, maybe sentence length, keyword density, then the assignment itself starts to morph, right? It drifts towards valuing only what the system can easily score.
Perfectly put. The tool solves the problem of slow grading, but it does so by redefining critique into a narrow, measurable metric. It changes the work, potentially for the worse.
Okay, lens 1, beware solutionism. What's number 2?
Number 2 draws on Heidegger's concept of the standing reserve.
Okay, that sounds philosophical. Standing reserve. How does that relate to, say, a vector database?
Heidegger worried about how modern technology tends to frame the entire world, nature, culture, even people, as just resources, sitting there ready to be ordered, optimized, put on call for our use, a standing reserve.
Ah, I see.
So applying this to AI, it pushes back against that language of extraction we talked about. Harvesting data, ingesting books, mining culture. It views our entire cultural output as just raw material waiting in the latent space.
So the lens asks us to reject that view.
Yes, and to practice designing for a different revealing, as Heidegger might put it.
Okay, but practically, what does that look like for a designer or an artist using these tools?
It could be about exercising intentional scarcity. Maybe you consciously decide not to feed certain sketches or studies into a data set. You keep them private.
Okay.
Or you meticulously document which parts of a final piece were generated versus which came from your own manual work, resisting the flattening of everything into output. It's about refusing to treat culture as mere fuel.
Got it. Resisting the standing reserve view, lens 3.
Lens 3 is McLuhan's media theory, Marshall McLuhan.
The medium is the message.
That, but also his idea about how media rearrange our senses, and, crucially, how they can reverse their effects at extremes.
How does that apply to AI?
Well, AI clearly enhances certain things, like ideation. It can generate endless variations, possibilities. That's its power.
Yeah.
But McLuhan would warn us to watch for the reversal. What happens when that infinite variety starts to converge? The risk is that it reverses into sameness.
How so?
Because the models are trained on existing data, they learn statistical averages, common patterns. So while it feels like infinite options, they can easily collapse towards the median, reproducing familiar tropes, styles, ideas just remixed.
So you get this illusion of novelty, but it's actually converging on a kind of statistically safe average.
Exactly. Innovation collapsing into the mean. You start wanting variety, you end up with slightly different versions of the same 5 popular graphic styles everyone else is prompted for.
Okay, that makes sense. Watch for the reversal into sameness. Lens 4.
Lens 4 builds on the Standard Technology Acceptance Model, or TAM.
TAM. That's the basic idea that we adopt tools if we think they're useful and easy to use, right?
Pretty much. It's widely used in tech adoption studies.
Yeah.
But the sources argue educators, especially, need to extend TAM. We need to add another critical factor: recoverability.
Recoverability, meaning, can I still do this without the tool?
Precisely. It's a simple but profound question. Can you still perform the task or skill the tool assists with if the tool were taken away?
So if I use Copilot to write code all the time.
You need to regularly check. Can I still structure a basic function from scratch?
Mm.
Do I remember the syntax? Is my hand memory for coding still there?
Because if the answer is no,
Then the tool hasn't augmented you. It has, in a way, de-skilled you. It has replaced a core part of your agency, leading to dependency. Tracking recoverability is vital.
okay, recoverability, got it. And the final lens, number 5.
The 5th lens is cultivate, the social construction of technology.
Coloraini. What's the core idea there?
Scott argues that technologies don't just appear fully formed with inevitable uses. Their meaning, their function, how they stabilize in society, it's all negotiated between different groups of people, stakeholders.
So if AI feels inevitable right now,
Scott suggests we're not doing the negotiation part properly. Adoption shouldn't be passive acceptance. It needs to be procedural. We need to treat the tools integration like a kind of public dramaturgy, a process we shape.
so the answer isn't just ban AI or fully embrace AI. It's about negotiating its specific role.
Exactly. Within your organization, your classroom, your studio, you collectively decide and stabilize its meaning. Maybe AI is agreed upon as a proposal engine, it generates ideas, but a human always has the final veto.
Or maybe a research assistant, but never the credited author.
Precisely. You allow the different stakeholders, the artists, the clients, the students, the teachers, the audience, to negotiate its specific place and meaning. That way, you reclaim the space for human intention and context.
These 5 lenses, Postman, Heidegger, McLuhan, TAM plus recoverability, Scott to me, they all seem to point back towards the core pedagogical goals mentioned in the sources.
They do. Things like fostering critical literacy about how these systems work, encouraging speculative practice to imagine alternatives, building ecological awareness of the material costs, demanding reflexivity about our own role, and grounding it all in relational ethics.
Yeah.
The ultimate goal isn't really about mastering the technical specifics of any one AI model that changes constantly anyway.
Right.
It's about learning how to negotiate with these systems, how to cultivate what the sources call epistemic care, actively tending to the conditions that allow for genuine knowledge, meaning, and human agency to survive and thrive, even within this increasingly automated landscape.
It's about being deliberate, being intentional in the face of just overwhelming computational power.
You got it.
So, reflecting on this whole deep dive, we've traced this journey from the here and now of Benjamin's aura, that tangible presence,
all the way to the latent space, this weird, non-physical, purely mathematical realm of vectors and statistical relationships where AI creates.
Yeah, that abstract realm.
It feels like the call to action is to shift from just being passive consumers of whatever comes out of that latent space to becoming maybe cartographers of complexity, actively mapping where the data originates, how the decisions are made, where the biases lie.
And that really leads to the final thought, the responsibility we want to leave with you, the listener. If the true place where AI-generated meaning originates is this latent space, this abstract topography of encoded potential, what is your responsibility? What's your role in deliberately reintroducing things the latent space itself doesn't know? Things like time, context, careful evaluation, embodied human sense-making. How do you bring those back into the process? What specific design intervention, what critical practice will you use to help us all see in this new dark? To reclaim agency not just from the algorithm, but from sheer statistical possibility.